Greetings. This is Cassandra. So I am a little late today, but I'm going to go ahead and get right to it. For those of you who've been joining me periodically or regularly, my name is Cassandra and I am, hey, DJ Speedy, what's up? Oh my gosh. So anyway, I am going to continue with what I've been doing for about 3 months now, the continued reading of The Great Cosmic Mother, Rediscovering the Religion of the Earth by Monica Zhu and Barbara Moore. Some of you may be tuning in live on Instagram, others live on YouTube. But anyway, I'm not going to spend a lot of time in any intro. I'm just going to go ahead and get started. Today I am reading chapter 45 of The Great Cosmic Mother. This chapter is entitled The Witch Hunts. And so, just for those who are tuning in on Instagram, this book I've been reading since February and will continue until the reading is complete, which may take maybe another couple weeks. I'm reading 3 days a week. So if you would like to go back and catch up, you can go to my YouTube page, which is Iapo, Iapo, Ingina, Ngina, and just look in my videos. Yeah, just look at my videos and we'll get started. You know, you can go and catch up or whatever. We're on chapter 45, so I'll begin. I'm only going to read for an hour today. The chapter is very long, so we might get to the middle of it. If life is inherently evil, the church fathers needed someone to blame. And who is better to blame than woman, who creates life from her own body? Living women also can be publicly punished, as the iconic and illusory devil can never be. Oh shit. The myth of feminine evil, which has dominated the Western world for over 2,000 years, led logically and directly to the religiously targeted murder of women as witches during the Great Inquisition of Europe. Until recently, the number of deaths from the Inquisition was euphemistically underestimated, as a way of denying about 500 years of systematic persecution and slaughter by the Holy Christian Church. Now, perhaps, deaths are overestimated. We don't know. The estimates range from 1 million to 9 million people burned or stoned or drowned as witches between the 15th and 18th centuries. Between 1200 and 1484, people were officially killed as heretics. One number is certain. Of people punished for witchcraft in Europe, 80% of those accused, tortured, and burnt were women. Town records from Germany and France reveal that whole villages were emptied of their female populations during the peak of the fire frenzy, including very young girls and very elderly women. Travelers of the time reported countrysides hideously littered with the stakes and pyres of burned women. Large numbers of homosexual men were also tortured and burnt at the stake. In fact, this is the origin of the term faggot, to denote a male homosexual. Homosexual men were bound together at the foot of witch pyres, their bodies used as faggots to kindle the flames. In Europe, at first, Christianity was a religion of the elite. It was an affectation of feudal lords and later kings who made Latin the official court, as well as church language, and who kept Christian priests around as house clerics. The large masses of people remained as they were, pagan, i.e., peasants on the land, practicing the ancient agricultural goddess rites. Unexpectedly for the Roman Church, however, its 3 centuries of crusades to the Holy Lands had an ideological side effect. Returning feudal lords brought back exotic religious and lifestyle ideas, including the tantric sexual arts, from the lands of the infidels, i.e., Islam with strong Moorish pagan undertones, i.e., Islam with strong Moorish pagan undertones. The European elite, nominally Christian, especially those in the most civilized parts of Europe, which were southern France, the wealthy cities of central France, Italy, Belgium, and the Rhinelands, were abandoning the fad of Christianity for more sensual and joyful spiritual amusements, including communal sex and bisexuality. Not to mention Goliad and Travers, troubadour poetry, and romantic lute music, lute from the Arabic al-oud, the wood, which was often composed and sung by wandering ex-monks in celebration of wine, women, and song. Their lyrics often mocked the church by turning hymns to the Virgin into erotic love songs to Venus and portrayed Christian clerics as drunken bums. The Roman Catholic Church was uneasy in Europe at this time, being constantly accused of priestly corruption, luxuriousness, and political religious chicanery. Europeans were backsliding into their indigenous paganism. Gnostic beliefs were circulating sub rosa, and communities of medieval hippies were springing up everywhere. The threatened church could not tolerate the mass apostasy of its rich southern feudal elites. Engaging in shady political deals with some northern feudal lords, it arranged for the massacres of the Knights Templar and other sexual mystical communes of southern France. Whoa. So, of southern France. Thus, circa 1200 was the Inquisition invented. The church claimed it was punishing heretics. In fact, these first slaughters of the playful and poetic southern French aristocracy, the Roman Church was declaring its political intention to stay in power in Europe by any means necessary, including the murder of anyone who questioned its power or simply adopted a lifestyle of which it did not politically approve. Originally, the church had no punishment for witchcraft. In fact, it was considered heresy to believe in the possibility of a bewitchment. People were simply condemned for the delusions of flying, enchantment, and the like. But in the mid 15th century, Roman Catholic dominated Europe was in hideous turmoil once again. It had undergone the Black Plague, the 100 Years' War, and so many other physical manifestations of its spiritual morbidity under Christianity. Nations were beginning to mark borders and gather secular power under kings vis-a-vis universal power of the Roman Empire, of the Roman Pope and his archbishops throughout Europe. The church had already established a pattern of accumulating and tightening its secular power by way of religious purges, heretic hunting. By this means, it terrorized and eliminated its political ideological enemies, and at the same time diverted or co-opted the seething sexual revolutionary energies of the masses of the people. In 1884, therefore, Pope Innocent, pronounced a papal bull against the now suddenly discovered crime of witchcraft. He announced witchcraft as an organized conspiracy of the devil's army against the peace and common order of the Holy Christian Empire, a peace and common order which people living under that empire had rarely experienced. And thus, the war against women was officially launched by the Christian papacy as a divisionary tactic to keep itself in power through the strategy of sheer terror. 2 years later, in 1486, two Dominican monks, Henrik Kramer and Jacob Springer, published a book called Malleus Maleficarum, or which translated to Hexenhammer, or the Hammer of the Witches. This book, in which femina is derived from the Latin fem minus, lacking in faith. Ha, shite. lacking in faith, oh my God, was the official handbook of the witch hunters who found in it priestly and psychological justification for their already religiously aggravated hatred and fear of women. It became the indispensable authority of the Inquisition during the next 300 years of mass terror and persecution throughout Europe. The hammer stated that the human females were, by nature, agents and tools of the devil, and it gave explicit instructions for recognizing the signs of the devil and uh, of signs of devil possession. Any wart, mole, or freckle, any other skin blemish was a sign that a woman had been kissed by Satan and was evidence enough to send her to the stake. Behavior also was stigmatic. The way a woman or young girl dressed, the way she walked or talked, her hairstyle, oh my God, the way she moved her eyes, any suspicions or envy that she might arouse in neighbors, any uniqueness, any creativity, authority, or stubbornness of mind she might display for any reason whatsoever. All, all was the signature of the devil in her flesh. For wasn't woman born, in God's own words, to entertain Satan in her private parts, and thus to endanger the souls of men? In Kramer's and Springer's professional opinions, only the rarest of females, the dead ones, were proof against demonic seduction and inhabitation, baby. Y'all ain't hearing. Come on. Come on in. Get this word. Thus was tumultuous Europe given a reason for all its woes. Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. Come on, man. This shit reading like it was written yesterday. Thus, in tumultuous Europe, unless you want to substitute that for tumultuous America, I'm just saying. Thus was tumultuous Europe given a reason for all its woes. Oh my God. Cher says La Femme and burned her. The Malleus Maleficarum inflamed the paranoia and hatred of the male mind against the female flesh. Okay. Let's see. The Malleus Maleficarum inflamed the paranoia and hatred of the male mind against the female flesh and mental autonomy. And in the hands of the local priest, preacher, and judge, sanctified the arrest, torture, and burning of any woman who was denounced. Millions of European women, among them the best and bravest minds of their day, for these were days of cowards and fools, the only type who survived in large numbers. Oh my God. The Christian, sorry about that. The Christian witch hunts, or the Christian witch burners, were obsessed with sex. And witch hammer constantly equates the devil with sexual activity. The power of the devil lies in the privy parts of men, end quote. It was also believed that all material life sprang from semen. Bodily speaking, sons and less valued daughters were owned by the father. As such, as much a part of the master's property as were servants and animals. Women, with their devil-inspired power over sex, were thus a major threat to a man's possessions, not only his soul, but all other worldly goods. Witches were accused of instigating extramarital sex, of inhibiting potency, hindering conception, slaying infants in the womb, all threats to the patrilineal property inheritance. For every impotent man, a woman could be, oh my God. For every impotent man, a woman could be tortured and burned. Oh my God. Within the grim Inquisition torture chambers also, prurience and piety were two joined hands. Women were raped and sexually abused by their official torturers as they lay chained to dungeon walls or spread out naked on the racks, all with the blessings of the priest, who readily rationalized these activities as devil exorcism. The torture instruments were blessed by the priest before they were used. Kramer and Springer, the two Dominican monks who wrote the hammer, were eventually chastised by the Catholic Church for their habit of going around to German villages and fabricating evidence of witchery. For example, Kramer paid an old drunk woman to hide in ovens and make weird noises, thus proving to her neighbors that the woman of the house was possessed. But of course, this chastisement was not severe. Even if evidence against a woman was fabricated, she probably was a witch anyway, or could be one someday, perhaps. An ounce of prevention, and so many women had already been burned, or would be burned. There was no way to stop it. Originally plotted and engineered by the Catholic Church, the European witch burnings took on an atmosphere of a natural holocaust, spiritual fires set by God, burning out the evil plagues of the human soul. Witchcraft was unavoidably political. It was what remained of the native pagan European religion, kept alive through 1,000 years of Roman Church imperialism and imported Christian ideology. Witchcraft was the religion of the countryside people and served as a tribal core around which potential and actual revolt could be mounted. Woo! Okay. King Richard was a witch. He dreamed of leading a pagan uprising against European Christian churches. Let's see. Let me go back. It says King Richard was a witch. He dreamed of leading a pagan uprising against the European Christian courts and churches, but the Crusades drained off resources and energy from his plans. Too many feudal lords chose to go off to fight in the Palestinian Holy Lands rather than remain at home fighting for their own pagan lands, the holy soil of the old religion. Come on. Witchcraft was why the church allowed Joan of Arc to be burned. She could not only lead France against its secular enemies, she might also lead the people against the oppressive dominance of the French church crown. For Joan of Arc was a native European witch, resonating to the needs and dreams of the peasantry. In the wrestling match for power between the Catholic Church and the new Reformation Protestant sects, witches were made scapegoats by both sides. In German Catholic villages and towns, priests directed the people to burn Protestants and witches. In German Protestant towns and villages, preachers called for the burning of Catholics and witches. In these endless sectarian games, which make up most of European history, people's conditioned biophobias, the endless paranoias and hatreds produced by dogmatic repression, were systematically directed by the Christian church against witches, women, and other scapegoats, and thus diverted from rebellion against what was truly oppressing them, the unearthed wealth, power, and corruption of the Christian church itself. Martin Luther has been ballyhooed as a freedom-loving reformer. In fact, he was the same tyrant in stubbornly unpriestly garb. All the reformist men were fanatic haters of witchcraft. Shouted Luther, quote, I would have no compassion on the witches. I would burn them all. End quote. Martin Luther raged against the peasant rebellions that were breaking out everywhere because the peasants were pagans. Luther believed the revolts were instigated and led by witches and Satan. Oh my God. Y'all ain't, oh my God. Y'all ain't hearing. Y'all are not hearing. We are talking history, but we are talking the present at the same time. Listen, it says Martin Luther raged against the peasant rebellions that were breaking out everywhere because the peasants were pagans. Luther believed that the revolts were instigated and led by witches and Satan, not by oppression, not by fucking witch burnings, not by torture and theft of property, no, by witches and Satan. He saw clearly that these indigenous uprisings threatened the imperialist Christian church crown control of Europe, which he fully supported. He called for the merciless slaughter of all the rebellious peasants in God's name. 5 centuries of Holy Inquisition, especially the intensive 300 years of the witch 500 years of the witch hunts following the papal bull of 1484 were a means of increasing the real wealth as well as power of the Christian church. The property of every person burned passed directly into the church's possessions, lands, goods, money, and it wasn't just the poor who were burned. On the contrary, the Inquisition was finally ended because more and more whole towns were being ravaged and depopulated, with leading citizens arrested and brought to the stakes. Thousands upon thousands of acres of land, homes, farms, and businesses, personal wealth and goods, all stripped from the accused witch and absorbed into the church. Children of the condemned were forced to stand before the stakes, watching their parents burn. As they watched, they were whipped by the priest as punishment for being spawn of the devil. These children, orphaned and robbed all of their inheritance except shame and grief, were sent to wander as beggars or imprisoned in Christian orphanages. We can wonder how many of us are descendants of these church disinherited orphans who numbered in the millions. This didn't all happen so long ago. Witches were still being burned daily in 17th century Europe. The Inquisition gave itself license to use any means to force confessions out of the accused. Judicial torture, not allowed under native European law, was imported directly from old Roman law for the express purpose of extracting confessions from witches. The proving of devil possession was cunning, for the refusal to confess companionship with Satan was seen as a sign of guilt, as a sure sign of guilt, while confession was heard as clear admission of guilt, though most confessions were extracted only by the most hideous torture. Both denial and confession were punished with death. In some trials, witches were bound hand and foot and thrown in deep ponds. If they drowned, they were pronounced innocent. If they managed to float, they were hauled out, pronounced guilty, and dragged to the stake. Professional men called prickers made a living. Come on. Prickers made a living going from town to town, sticking needles into women. Accused women were exposed naked from the waist down in the public square for this purpose. The prick was a tool with a hollow shaft, allowing the pricker to appear to stick the woman's flesh. Appearing to stick the woman's flesh. If she didn't bleed from the wound, she was a witch. Oh my God, y'all ain't hearing what the hell I just said. Oh my God. Professional men called prickers made a living going from town to town, sticking needles into women. Accused women were exposed naked from the waist down in the public square for this purpose. The prick was a tool with a hollow shaft, allowing the pricker to appear to stick the woman's flesh. If she didn't bleed from the wound, she was a witch. Of course, with the secret retractable needle, the pricker could guarantee that many women did not bleed, and for each witch he thus exposed to death, he was paid money by the local church and the town government. Many male professionals profited from the witch trials and executions. Local judges, bailiffs, guards, and doctors all got their cut, as well as the torturer and the scaffold maker. In some cases, the accused witch was actually charged for the cost of searching her or his house, transportation to trial, the cost, oh my God, the cost of paper used to record the trial, all food eaten during imprisonment, the cost of wood consumed during the burning, and the travel expenses for two judges to escort the burnt body to a gravesite. The witch trial transcripts are hideous but sobering reading. From such transcripts, and for freedom, gleaned the story of Frau Pear. It seems a notable German judge, Franz Berman, lusted after Frau Pear's sister. The sister refused to sleep with him. In retaliation for her refusal, Frau Pear was arrested. She was arrested in the morning, and by 2 p.m., she was tortured. She was exorcised, shaved, searched, and raped by the torturer's assistant, and further tortured. To silence her cries, Judge Berman himself stuffed a dirty handkerchief into her mouth. After being tortured into naming her accomplices in witchcraft, Frau Pear was indeed convicted and burned alive in a hut of dry straw. Her husband, a court assessor, protested her trial and was thrown out of the courtroom. He died a few months later. Judge Berman was a busy man. In 2 visits to 3 small German villages near Bonn in 1631 and in 1636, he managed to burn alive 150 people from a total of 300 households. Some of the simpler torture instruments were so, okay, I say this all the time and I didn't. Okay, so this is like the worst chapter in the book. So this is a trigger warning for those that are watching. But this is what it is, right? This is a trigger warning. Every time I read the book, assume there's a trigger warning, okay? Some of the simpler torture instruments used were eye gougers, branding irons, metal forehead tourniquets, and spine twirlers with sharp metal protrusions. There were the usual thumb screws and leg vices, stocks with iron spikes, and boards with sharp pegs on which people were forced to kneel for hours. One of the more exotic instruments was called the Pear. It was roughly the size and shape of a pear, constructed in 2 metallic halves, each attached to a handle and hinged to open, like scissors or forceps. The pear was heated to red hot, then inserted into the prisoner's mouth or anus or vagina, and spread open as far apart as it would go. One renowned trial judge in France, Jean Bourdon, boasted of torturing very young children and invalids. A lawyer, philosopher, and demonologist, considered one of the best minds of his generation, Bourdon specialized in cautery and hot irons, and then cutting out the putrefied flesh of his victims. Feathers were dipped in burning sulfur and clamped in the armpits and groins. People were given scalding baths and water mixed with lime. Bodies were stretched on racks and ladders or suspended by the thumbs with weights attached to the ankles. In the strappado, considered a mild torture, the arms are tied behind the back with a rope attached to a pulley. The body is hoisted up and weights were attached to the feet. In squassation and a more severe punishment, this trussed body was suddenly allowed to drop several feet, then jerked up, then dropped again. The point frequently achieved was to separate all the joints in the body. Even after people had confessed, been sentenced, and were waiting to be burned, they could still be subjected to random torture. Hands, tongues, noses, and ears were cut off, and women's breasts were torn with red hot pincers. Girls as young as 9 or 10 were persuaded through such tortures to confess that they had had sexual relations with the devil. In the American colonies, where an estimated 300 people were killed as witches, some burnt, but most hung, torture was also used against young and old. In Salem, Massachusetts in 1692, 2 young boys were tied up from the neck and heels until blood dripped from their noses. They confessed, accusing their mother, who was hung. Some of these activities took place in dungeons to the private titillation of torturers, judges, and priests. Other tortures occurred in public with much pious fulmination, supposedly to edify, terrify, and entertain the general population. And of course, the design, manufacture, and sale of torture devices was big business, especially in Germany, but also in France and Spain, where the Inquisition was at its worst and its longest. All this hideous activity, we must remember, took place in the name of Christ and by the will of God, and was said to be aimed solely at the discipline and salvation of the human soul. Exodus 22:18 injunction. Let's see. Exodus 22:18 injunction. Thou shalt not suffer a witch to live, which was frequently quoted, though in 1584, an Englishman, Reginald Scott, pointed out that the Hebrew word for poisoner had been mistranslated to witch. But pagan witches, as specialists in herbal medicine and hallucinogens, were easy to slander as poisoners in the Old Testament Hebrew as well as medieval European times. The words could have been used interchangeably. There are numerous biblical texts expressing Yahweh's hatred and condemnation of all people who could be generically defined as witches, diviners, pythons, conjurers, fortune tellers. We know that all Neolithic goddess worshiping peoples were identified by the Hebrew prophets and patriarchs as evil, idolatrous, and unclean, and Yahweh wanted them all dead. Christianity's remarkably ugly record of religious intolerance begins in the Old Testament, where Yahweh's people are directed by him to murder anyone practicing a rival religion. The 500 years of European Inquisition and witch burnings had their direct inspiration and sanctification from the Holy Bible, and there is no way to avoid this conclusion. The secular motives and the secular gains of the witch hunts can be credited to the imperialism of the Roman Catholic Church, to the equally power-hungry fanaticism of the Protestant reformists, and to all the other European men who obtained advantage or sick thrills from the torture and destruction of the human body in general, and women's bodies in particular. The Christian church used the Bible's divine mandate for religious murder not only to survive the political turmoil of the Middle Ages, but to expand and secure one of the largest and most powerful secular institutions on earth, Western Christendom. We have been persuaded to believe by Christian apologists that the church only meant to execute the bad witches, people who cursed and poisoned their fellow beings. This is an outright lie. The Christian church during the Inquisition did make distinction between the good witch and bad witch, and it ordered that both kinds be destroyed. Theologians of the day wrote that the good witch was a more horrible and detestable monster than the wicked one. The church claimed that the good witches were even more harmful to its authority than the maleficent ones. Civil law did not call for punishment of the white witch or unbinding witch, as the helpful witches were called, but ecclesiastical law did. Why? Because the good witch more effectively persuaded her neighbors of the genuine power of her religion. She successfully undermined God's will that humans should suffer. Her cures worked. Come on. For 1,000 years, the people had one healer and one healer only, the sorceress. Emperors and kings and popes and the richest barons had sundry doctors of Salerno, or Moorish and Jewish physicians. But the main body of every state, the whole world, we may say, consulted no one but the saga, the wise woman. The priest realizes clearly where the danger lies, that an enemy, a menacing rival, is to be feared in this high priestess of nature he pretends to despise. And the Dominican Springer, he of the hammer, wrote, quote, "We should speak of the heresy of the sorceresses, not of the sorcerers. Not of the sorcerers. The latter are of small account. Nature makes them sorceresses." End quote. A French writer under Louis the 13th wrote, quote, "For one sorcerer, 10,000 sorceresses." End quote. The sorceress, the town witch, was also and always the people's healer, the midwife, the skilled pharmacologist. The people needed her. Women especially needed her. Christian authorities admitted that the good witch's help to the country people was of ancient tradition and good effect, but this was the cause for burning them. The white witch's power to cure sickness proved that she had a pact with the devil. The priests could not cure. They had only punitive dogmas, abstract words, empty gestures typical of rootless ritual. Ha! Listen. The white witch could cure, which was evidence of her being in league with the devil. The priest could not cure anything. They had only punitive dogmas, abstract words, empty gestures, typical of rootless ritual. If the good witch could cure, clearly she possessed superior knowledge and power, a possibility the church could not allow. Instead, it officially sourced her power in evil. Quote, "The white and black witch were both guilty alike in compounding with the devil." End quote. Thus, with one stroke, the priestly hierarchies eliminated both their rivals for public influence and the living evidence that their own religion was a fraud. Ah. Come on. As the witch hammer spelled it out, any unexplained power or phenomena was suspicious, sourced in evil. And 15th century Europe was a hotbed of unexplained phenomena. There were rational extant who scoffed at the notion of witchery, arguing that strange occurrences could be the result of a simple manipulation of hidden but natural powers, not necessarily demonic ones. But all power, however, human or natural, threatened the total authority of the church fathers, and the real powers of witches, powers of nature and human psyche, knowledge, customs, and techniques going back for a millennia, were the greatest threat of all, for these were precisely the traditions the patriarchy had broken with. The Malleus Maleficarum called for the destruction of the ancient and secret knowledge of poisons and herbs and drugs, healing and hurtful, a tradition of lore which had been handed down from the remotest of times. Healing and hurtful. It was not the witch's wickedness, but her effectiveness that the church wanted to destroy. Come on and act like you hear what the hell I'm saying. God, damn. Ah. Come on, y'all. Y'all better act like this scripture I'm giving to you right now. You feel me? Let me fix my life right quick. Yeah. It was their effectiveness that they wanted to destroy. In patriarchal religion, only God has power. Come on, y'all. Power does not exist in nature. It is not something he shares with his creatures. dreams, faith, and energy must be strictly directed and controlled by his church, his police force on earth. Oh my God. And no one no one may fly through the night with the moon, or envision other worlds, or commune with the earth and the stars, or cure illness with herbs, without being seen as an agent of the devil. The monks Kramer and Springer prove that any form of knowledge which is not a direct revelation of God the Father is of the devil. And only priests had direct revelation of God. An ordinary mortal claiming such experience was clearly possessed by Satan. The people's ancient knowledge was, of its very nature, suspect and sinful. The miracles performed by Christian saints were given them by the grace of God, not by the power of nature. In Christianity, nature has neither grace nor power. If it appears to exhibit either, the appearance must be devilish. The saints' miracles, oh my God, the saints' miracles were evidence only of anti-natural power belonging to those who deny nature and give themselves to the Father. This kind of power exhibited by the saint who stood before a crowd of peasants and slowly, one by one, plucked all the feathers out of the body of the wild bird. He then handed around the bloody, tortured mass as evidence that nature could not save her creatures. Once God had willed their destruction at the hands of a holy man. Since, quote, since we are born of God, what wonder then that the sons of God enjoy extraordinary powers, end quote. The daughters of the goddess, on the other hand, were burned alive by the millions for exhibiting and using their own extraordinary powers. And when we see that witch knowledge was identical with agricultural knowledge, come on. When we see that witch knowledge was identical with agricultural knowledge, with earth, moon, star lore, then it is no wonder that the peasants' rebellions were tied in with the witch hunts. Neither shall, this is a quote, neither shall we use enchantment nor observe times. Leviticus 19:26. Quote, idolatry is the first of all superstitions. Divination is the second, and the observing of times and seasons the third. This is from the Malleus Maleficarum, Part 1, Question 2. Quote, seemingly, demons are readier to appear when summoned by magicians under the influence of certain stars. They do this in order to deceive men, thus making them suppose that the stars have some divine power or actual divinity. And we know that in days of old, this veneration of the stars led to the vilest of idolatries. From the Malleus Maleficarum, Part 1, Question 2. Quote, there are three superstitions: necromancy, geomancy, and hydromancy. Malleus Maleficarum, Part 1, Question 2, end quote. Three superstitions: the study of death, earth, and water, plus the study of the stars. St. Augustine opposed cyclic theories of the moon, and Christian men could proclaim, as they did, quote, sun and moon were made for us. How am I to worship what are my servitors? End quote. Christianity was the abstract ideology of an urban-centered, court hierarchic priesthood. Its organization was obsessed with political power only. It knew nothing about the land, the seasons, the crops, natural energies. If the peasants listened to the church, nothing would grow. These brilliant monks who wrote so contemptuously about superstition, let us remember, also believed that the earth was flat and at the center of the universe, and that the mother of the universe was a man. Come on, y'all. That the mother of the universe was a man. Who created the first female from Adam's rib? According to Cosmos, a 6th century Christian geographer, Jerusalem was at the center of the flat earth, which had been created about 4000 BC by a Hebrew thunder god. To doubt such Christian superstitions during Inquisition days meant heresy and could lead to one being burnt at the stake. We will never know what harm was done to the human psyche by these rabid terrorists. Christianity destroyed books, libraries, whole cultures and their records, monuments of ancient knowledge and wonderful art, that it set the intellectual development of the human race back hundreds of thousands of years, we already know. We can only begin to guess what it did to the natural poetic psyche of human beings, the dream process itself. Ecstasy, divination, foretelling, entrancement, the use of magic herbs, drugs, and shamanic yogic techniques, powers essential to the evolutionary health and balance of the human psyche were forbidden, punished, and driven into a guilt-ridden underground by Christian dogma. The witch hammer reinforced the Old Testament injunction that all dreamers must be stoned to death. Quote, a man or a woman in whom there is a pythonical or divining spirit, or that is a wizard, let them die. They shall all be stoned. Leviticus 20:27. Thou shalt not hearken unto the words of that prophet or that dreamer of dreams, and that prophet or that dreamer of dreams shall be put to death. Deuteronomy 13:3-5. The Malleus Maleficarum proclaims, quote, those women are called pythons, in whom the devil works extraordinary things. It is unlawful for any man to practice divination, and if he does so, his reward shall be death by the sword of the executioner, end quote. The Malleus and the church denounced witchcraft as a spiritual crime. It blasphemed and profaned the Creator. Perhaps more crucial, the psychic powers tapped and activated by witches were defined as political crimes. Quote, witchcraft is high treason against God's majesty, end quote. Because the state acted as police, prosecutor, judge, and executioner for the church's definition of such crime, high treason against God surely constituted a threat to the temporal power as well. Thought police and dream police are not 20th century atheistic inventions. They are our inheritance from the European Inquisition, which, in the joint name of God and the King, initiated the most extreme active manipulation and politicization of human mental processes ever known to humans. According to Christianity, human beings may have only one dream, the dream of redemption through Christ from the sin of being born. Oh my God. Oh my God. Y'all have not heard what the hell I'm talking about. Y'all do not understand. Y'all ain't hearing me because y'all ain't talking to me. Listen, I'm not going to preach today. I'm just going to read. Listen, according to Christianity, human beings may only have one dream, the dream of redemption through Christ from the sin of being born. The entire ancient relation between the cosmos and the human mind, mediated by the dream process, was thus interfered with and distorted by patriarchal dogma. The witches were accused of riding through the night with Diana, of practicing divination, of studying the stars and observing seasons, of having knowledge of plants for medicinal and visionary purposes. In other words, they were accused of dreaming dreams and using their own minds. They were accused and found guilty of communing with the powers of the universe and for knowing themselves to be one with that universe. Come on. This is today. I don't know if y'all are experiencing it the same way I am. This is today. This is today. Such knowledge, such communion is a major crime in any society where a biophobic father rules. To this day, we in the enlightened West are surrounded by laws forbidding us of natural drugs like peyote and mushrooms for pathogenic purposes. North American Indians, like pagan people around the world, were punished by their conquerors for practicing peyote rituals and shamanism. As substitutes, they were handed the white man's poisons, Christianity, and alcohol. Alcohol and drugs became addictions only in cultures where ritual drug use is forbidden. Oof. Christian missionaries fight peyote and mushroom use for political reasons. They want to be in total control. They want to be, they want to be in total control of the human visionary experience. They want to control the contents and directions of our very dreams. And where missionaries fade away, modern psychotherapists come on strong. Established mental health doctrine views all powerful messages and visions from the subconscious, the self, as undesirable symptoms of mental disturbance. Too many of our modern visionaries have been inquisitioned by straitjackets, the normalizing drugs, electroshock therapy, and lobotomies. From the torturer of the Inquisition, breaking bodies on the rack in the name of saving souls, to the modern psychiatrist administering electroshock therapy or sonic lobotomies for the purpose of adjusting the mind, there is little difference. Both are cremators of the soul that dreams. Both, in the name of cure, are employed by a society that needs to adjust human beings to la vida sin sueños. The witch burnings didn't take place during the Dark Ages, as we commonly propose, or as we commonly suppose. Y'all, that last paragraph was vicious. God damn. Oh my God. The witch burnings didn't take place during the Dark Ages, as we sometimes suppose. They occurred between the 15th and 18th centuries, precisely during and following the Renaissance, that glorious period in Europe when, as we are taught, men's minds were being freed from bleakness and superstition. While Michelangelo was sculpting and Shakespeare was writing, witches were burning. Ha. Oh. The whole secular enlightenment, in fact, the male professions of doctor, lawyer, judge, artist, all arose from the ashes of the destroyed bodies of women's cultures. Renaissance men were celebrating naked female beauty in their art, while women's bodies were being tortured and burned by the hundreds of thousands all around them. New communication technology also contributed to witch hunts. The printing press was established in 1450. The first major work printed was the Bible. Martin Luther was born in 1483. We know that the Protestant Reformation of the early 16th century was fueled in large part by the existence of the new mass printing technology. The Latin Bible used by the Catholic Church was an elitist handbook. Few possessed it. Fewer could read it. The Reformists argued for the translation of the Bible into German, into all the European vernaculars, so that the people could read the Word of God for themselves. This religious revolution, oh my God, this religious revolution was made possible by the new print technology. As the 16th century heated up, as we've said, witches were everywhere, caught in the crossfire between the Catholic Church and the Protestant Reformists. But there was another turn of the screw. In the 16th century, for the first time, people were able to read the Bible's misogyny in their own languages. Before, they'd received only the Latin passages and the interpretations of priests. But now the full word of God was spread before their eyes, and Yahweh's wrathful condemnation of female flesh as the unclean playing field of the devil was quite clear. Because of their fundamentalist literalism in the following of the Holy Writ, the misogyny of the Reformists was often more extreme, if possible, than that of the Catholics. Further, the new popular press throve on the witch hunts. Etched plates depicting pornographic scenes of witches romping with satanic figures, and graphic etchings and woodcuts showing varieties of tortures, drownings, and burnings of women were printed in large numbers and broadcast through every town, large and small. Some feminists might feel these popular press images were the snuff films and the penthouse magazines of their day. They purported to be on-the-spot depictions of tortures and burnings, with naked and half-naked female bodies screaming and writhing in endless postures of agony, surrounded by well-dressed male judges, religious accusers, prickers, and other righteous gentlemen of the time. There is no doubt that these mass-printed images fueled a mass paranoia against women, against witches. They also marked the beginnings in the West of pornography as popular entertainment. It is historically chilling to consider that the new print medium, before it ever served as a tool of mass education or enlightenment, was used as a firebrand to ignite mass hysteria and murder. But this was the case. The new technology of the radio reserved the rising terrorist dictate. Oh my God. Come on, man. Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh. Oh my God. It is historically chilling to consider that the new print medium, before it ever served as a tool of mass education or enlightenment, began as a firebrand to ignite mass hysteria and murder. But this was the case. The new technology of the radio served the rising terrorist dictatorship of Adolf Hitler in the same way. And the use, oh my God, the use of the television medium by demagogic, hell-raising preachers and politicians, especially in America, might give us frisson of forewarning. Jerry Mander, an analyst of modern electronic communications media, points out that certain media favor certain fundamentalist types of God and religious worldviews. Religion with charismatic leaders, single all-powerful God, or individual godlike figures are simpler to handle on television because they have highly defined characteristics. Nature-based religions are dependent upon a gestalt of human feeling and perceptual exchanges with the planet, and would lose their meaning on TV. Okay, so I'm flipping right now because she's saying that at least in the Western world, the emergence of the printing press in human history, its first use was the propagation to elicit the support of the massacre of women as witches. That was its starting use in Europe. And I am reminded when she talks about the radio use of the rising terroristic dictatorship of Adolf Hitler. Adolf Hitler was the first to broadcast, to do a live broadcast when the Olympics was held in Germany at the time. It was the first time that they had been live broadcast. Germany did that with radio and television. Fast forward, and even backtrack, the first use the first film ever produced and showed nationally was Birth of a Nation, about the rise of the Ku Klux Klan as a propaganda instrument to grow the Klan, produced by Hollywood. My God. Okay, so anyway, devil projection and witch hunting are functional parts of patriarchy. They are essential tools of mass control via mass energy diversion. Listen, devil projection and witch hunting are functional parts of patriarchy. They are essential tools of mass control via mass energy diversion. If life is born of evil, as Christians believe, then devil paranoia is chronic to Christian life. If we look at Western Christian history through our pagan evolutionary glasses, we can see that demon projection and witch hunting has never really stopped. They are endemic in Western politics, to Western politics. One reason the Inquisition and witch burnings died down in Europe was that Christian European kings, governments, and religious men and male citizens had found new hunting grounds as scapegoats. A round world had given them new worlds to conquer, with new heathens to convert, use, and destroy. Europe emerged from the Inquisition of its own peoples via the Inquisition of the Dark Others across the oceans, i.e., imperialist colonialism. There were Black Africans to be enslaved on their own continent, or dragged in chains to the American colonies, where there were also numerous indigenous tribes of pagan idolaters, the North, Central, and South American Indians, all of whom could be defined as mere animals, bestial demons, and spawns of the devil. Whatever it took to rationalize enslaving them, massacring them, ripping off and cannibalizing their lands, cultures, and life energies. Whenever we read the history of Western colonial imperialism during the 15th to 19th centuries, we should remember that the political and religious institutions and worldviews conducting it were the same as those who conducted the Christian Inquisition and witch hunts for 5 solidly sadistic centuries. Christian men, in the name of Christ, enlarging their properties, their powers, and their pieties in the same bite. Witch hunting and devil projecting is in more or less subtle forms, are classic patriarchal tools. They can be picked up and used anytime, anywhere to build the house of God, that exclusive clubhouse of ambitious men. All right, so I'm going to stop there for today. So for those who may have tuned in late, listen, there's so much to unpack here, and so I'm trying very, very hard to be disciplined about not giving commentary while I read. I really want to just read this book straight through. Then what we're going to do, I hope to be done with this book by the end of June. I should be. I'm more than halfway through. We're going to initiate the book club in July, so that we can, if you want to go back to the reading while we go through the chapters in a kind of Q&A style, right, to really go deep into this book. But and so for those that are tuning in late or came in late, this is The Great Cosmic Mother, Rediscovering the Religion of the Earth, written by Monica Zhu and Barbara Moore. The book was published in 1987, and it's everything. Like, it is everything. To me, have me tell it. It is the evidence of channeling. It is a sign of the times, the evolutionary leaps that our spirits, our ancient memory is attempting to make through the enslaved, our enslaved flesh. You understand? And so I'm going to continue to read this book. I'm going to, again, be, facilitating, finally opening up the book club. I probably won't facilitate through Facebook. I'll be honest. Right now, I have everything posted on Facebook. Is where I make all the posts on all that stuff. But I will probably have something a lot more dynamic by July. A location online to facilitate, even if it's through Zoom, but to facilitate the book club, because we got to get in this book. We got to get in this book. For those of you who are people of color, in particular, baby, we have to get into these hard conversations about white people. These kind of conversations that those among us, I'm talking about color folk, red, black, brown, yellow. These conversations that we refuse to have. These conversations that are difficult to have about the future, what the future can look like, what it has to be, and the role that we and white people must play to create this future. It is a conversation that we do not want to have because, we love our nationalism. You understand? We love the things that make us us, that are peculiar to us, or so we think. I get it. I've been there a long, long time. It's some shit I'm still trying to make peace with. You feel me? But I am saying, baby, this book, you had me tell it the book is possessed. Okay? The book is possessed with the spirit of millions and millions and millions of ancestors attempting to communicate to us that everything that we need, all the information that we need, all the lived experiences that we have needed to have to transform, to leap forward, we have it all. Every detail, every instrument, every form of technology, every ability to communicate across borders we couldn't communicate across before, every lived experience of every person on earth, living or transitioned. We don't have any excuse, man. We just don't. All we can do is do what the fuck we're supposed to do to change the world. That's it. And I'm telling you, in my estimation, this book is one of the instruments that will be necessary to have a clear, uncluttered vision of how to do that. A simplistic, clear, uncloudy vision of the way forward. This is why I am reading this book again for the fourth time, for the second time live. It is because there has to be something that shines through the proliferation of madness that we are surrounded by. So much noise. 2 years of pandemic and nobody, quote, in power has anything to say about it. No collective recovery initiated by this caring government who really is interested in our lives and shit. No, even just a summation. Can we just sit down and have a deep summation of what the fuck just happened to the whole world for the last 2 years? Can we come together and say, what is the recovery process for the millions of people who died globally over the last 2 years? Is there a collective ceremony that we can do to restore people? I just think about everything that has just happened to us, and there ain't been no breaks in the trauma. These motherfuckers are capitalizing off the trauma. They are. These orchestrations of madness that we are confronted by, what, 7 mass shootings in the last month? And we are so victimized, man. From the last 2 years, it's like, damn, we can't even catch a break. We just came out the motherfucking house, and now everybody buck wilding, and ain't nobody got an explanation for what is happening in the world. None that gives them peace. None that makes sense of this madness, right? So I don't know. I just feel like this book, in my estimation, is the starting point. It's a good place to start, right? The traditions of our ancestors is a good place to start in understanding. A deep understanding. We got to get into the sciences of our ancestors, baby. We have to understand our place in the universe. The earth is not apart from heaven. The earth is in heaven, floating the fuck in heaven. We are a part of the universe. And we have to get comfortable understanding our place in the heavens, our role in the universe, and how the universe impacts us just like we impact it. We do. I'll tell you the science I'm telling you right now. You understand? We have to, maybe. Because it's these hidden sciences that have been reduced to ooga booga and witchery that have kept those in power over us. It is that which they have kept from us that has given them the hegemony over us. So we got to get into this shit. And the more uncomfortable, the better. The more unfamiliar, the better. I'm just saying. So I'm going to stop there. Probably just do another video because, this shit is on me. This shit is on me. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, so this is Cassandra. That's how I'm going to announce myself from here on out. I am Cassandra Faye Floyd, born of Jacqueline Jeanette Cook by birth and Stephen Ray Floyd. Okay? My name means she who shines light on mankind. She has the energy of the Faye. She is the descendant of the 3 Fates. And she, my last name, Floyd, who is the gray-haired or wise beyond her years. This is my name, right? And this is how I am going to be. This is going to be how I'm addressed, from here on out, is Cassandra. And so it's important for me to say that. So anyway, we got to get in this shit. Because y'all think shit is uncomfortable right now. We ain't but 3 months in. 3 months in to the Pluto returns. Pluto does not transition out of Capricorn till November of 2024. We got 2 years of this shit. And so what are we going to make of it? Are we going to... Come on, what are we going to make of it? I'm in there. I'm probably just going to do something a little different a little later. Right now, I'm going to go sit under a tree somewhere and finish my hair. So this is Cassandra. Thank you so much for tuning in. I will probably do another live again tonight. That is not me reading the book. It will be just some, revelations that have come to me over the last week since we had this magnanimous new moon on Sunday that has been kicking my whole ass. And I'm sure even if you ain't into astrology, everybody been feeling it. Everybody been complaining about it. You understand? And so I have had some extraordinary and powerful revelations over the last week. So I'll probably do a live tonight and just share that with you all. And then I'm probably going to go black for a few days. You feel me? So if I do, just know I'll be back on Monday to continue the wonderful, magnanimous, prophetic writings of Monica Zhu and Barbara Moore in the great work, The Great Cosmic Mother, Rediscovering the Religion of the Earth. Go to my YouTube channel, which is Iyapo Ngina, IYAPO NGINA. That will be changing soon, by the way. But for the meantime, it's Iyapo Ngina. Go to my YouTube channel and you can see all of the chapters that I've read so far. Also in the link in the descriptions, you can also get you can click on the link that sends you to a PDF version of the book. So you can actually read the book online, print it, whatever. But the book is online for free as a PDF. You can contact me. My email address is there if you'd like to donate, but please share the video, like the video, tap the notifications button, but more than anything, share the video. The book is gold. The book is gold. Okay? So thank you so much. See you again probably later this evening. Peace.